Hi, everybody, and welcome to the webinar. My name is Sean Fitzpatrick. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer with Overit. This is Chris Boggs.
And I'm the Chief Organic Strategist with Overit.
And the name of the webinar is Trusted, Found, and Chosen Home Services Content in the Age of AI. This is really, it's about content and it's about the general practices for discoverability on LLMs and traditional search. So we're calling it AI SEO around here. We're going to talk a little bit more about the name, but our goal is that you're going to get some actionable tips. So this summer, if you haven't started yet, you can get going on the work to make sure that your brand is discoverable in tools like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, as well as on the Googles. So we've got a lot of tips. We're going to get right into it. There's a chance to ask questions at the end. There's a little chat box on this webpage over to that side, I think. Go ahead and put your questions in, and we'll get to them as we go. So without further ado, shall we rock on?
Let's do it.
All right. So we start out talking about the landscape of search. And the first piece is about the numbers of just how many users there are. And I guess I'll ask you to just speak about the scope on this. It's hundreds of millions of users every week, every month. And this is just basically saying the train has left the station. Yeah,
that's right. And especially in home services, I mean, people, they want to know answers. And we know how prevalent DIY is, right? So that's part of a tussle that in the home services industry you have to deal with is having informational content that in a sense helps them, right? So it's a tussle to get in front of these people that sometimes hopefully will realize that they can't do it themselves, right? And so, but the numbers are there. These are self-reported by the engines. Copilot doesn't report its own numbers. It's only estimated 100 to 150 million. I'd say that's got to be bigger, especially given the number that Google reports and ChatGPT reports.
And maybe next week these numbers are going to be even higher.
That's true.
It just continues
by
to grow.
By the time you see this deck.
So the train has left the station and it's affecting website traffic. So basically, there's less traffic from Google, right, Chris? So tell us more.
Yeah, so a lot of traffic, and especially again in the home services place, we see a lot of people that did pretty good SEO in the last 10, 15 or more years that developed a lot of great informational content, specifically about pest types, for example, or cleaning
the libraries,
pools, or any number of other potential home services topics in order to build their relevance for SEO. So they got a lot of traffic and boom, it fell off a cliff at the beginning of last year. If you've been doing SEO since last year to April or May 2025, you should be starting to see an uptick now. All that big dramatic loss of traffic, which I'm going to tell you about in a sec where that went, it's gone, right? So keep that in mind. If you're doing SEO, you shouldn't be, oh, it's 25% year over year loss anymore. You should be back to flat.
It dropped and now it's gonna
exactly. There's a new reality. Flat. Exactly. Okay. And so well, the thing is that there's two concepts here, right? People, again, the DIYers. So in a sense, that's traffic maybe you don't even want, right? If there are people that are looking for a simple solution for how to get rid of, a couple black flies and you don't really want their business anyway, they're going to get their information right from the AI overview. Or at my Florida home during the spring, how do I take care of preventing termites in my Florida home during the spring if I'm not there? That's the type of a search that might happen right now. That is something that you do want to be there for, right? So the bottom line is that kind of search will lead to clicks eventually, but zero-click searches are 65% of Google queries now. So people are getting the answer there. And if there's an AI overview, 80% of people don't even click on anything. So that's the reality. And that said, that reality has been around since May of 2025. So we're fighting for the same amount of traffic now that remains in home services, right? You and your competitors across the different home services industries. So it's a more of an important land grab. And the other thing there is that you'll find that people are going to, if they find you in the LLMs, they will start to search in Google for your brand, and you're going to catch them there too, and that'll help.
Okay, so there's less traffic. We're done grieving with that, and the traffic that companies are getting is perhaps more qualified because they're really buyers, right? And so we're just in the era of there are zero-click searches and we don't grieve about it.
That's correct.
Okay. So next trend then, search is now conversational and contextual. So the numbers are huge. 8.5 billion voice assistance devices are in use. I think that's more than the human population. It still is, right? And that's a lot of devices. Yeah. And those searches are done with long phrases, right? So people are talking to agents like it's their friend. And so the average search now is 29 words. Gone are the days of people just going and saying HVAC company, right? Or, winter, best oil near me. It's short phrases. They'll ask a whole sentence. And so we need to figure out, how do we meet those searches with our SEO strategies? Yeah. Okay.
And Gen Z.
Yeah.
And those are the buyers of the future. You could argue, some people would argue that home services, Gen Z, or whatever, but they're influencers. If they're the ones that are too hot upstairs in their room and the AC is broken, and
they're influencers in my house. Yes.
Hey, mom, call this person, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they'll be the buyers before you know it. Yeah,
exactly.
And then the next trend is about trust, and so what is the dead internet theory?
So the dead internet theory has been around about 10 years, in which you can start to see, and people are seeing it now a lot in Facebook and other social media, where it's just obviously AI created. It's not real, right?
Yeah.
And at first people would be getting caught a lot more by this stuff, but now they're really like starting to wonder, and they're really looking at a lot of content online with a filter in their eyes. Now, in home services, maybe there's not going to be as much of that in terms of like communication that's going on. The dead internet theory is that bots are talking to bots, right? And somewhere in an alternate reality, there's humans talking to humans, right? But AI content and imagery is easy to sniff out. It's easier to sniff out. So in home services, the authenticity is that much more important, right? So if you're using just stock images, for example, and you're not taking advantage of putting pictures of pests and in the surrounding area where you're actually doing business, that's not authentic, right?
Yeah.
And it's classic, just trying to do it to check a box. The authenticity is super important now, because humans are already wondering if stuff's real or not.
Okay, so it's a question of trust and authenticity.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we'll keep our eye on that. We'll address that. Now, we do want to talk, before we go into these actionable tips, just to clarify, what's the difference between this new AI SEO and good old fashioned SEO? And then also, what should we call this stuff, right? So this slide is just a slide of all these different names people have been hearing, from GEO to SGE to AEO, answer engine optimization. Where do you think this is landing as far as, what are we calling this now?
I think we're kind of through this phase of the naming, hopefully. A lot of people outside the industry, they still think of it as SEO. GEO, AI, SEO, those are two of sort of my favorites, generative engine optimization. But, as we'll learn, it's very aligned with SEO. So whatever you call it, it's about sort of advanced what you were doing with SEO.
Okay, so so let's talk about those techniques. So this next slide speaks about what's the difference between these tools.
Yeah, well, we used to have a slide here where we show checkboxes of if it's in SEO or it's in GEO, and there was checks everywhere. What we see now is that even though large language models operate differently than search engines, they're still coming back to search engines for proof, right? And so they were sort of had egg on their face, because they were telling people how to get rid of termites by running bleach on their kitchen floor twice a night, stuff like that.
So issues with hallucinations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they've been trained to go back and recheck themselves in Google. So first of all, that means if you got to still be in Google, right? And especially if you're local to a specific area and a specific home service, you got to focus on your SEO, because you're not going to get double checked and you're not going to be there. If they find you somewhere else and you're not ranking in Google, they're probably going to prioritize something they found somewhere else but is ranking in Google, right? Is the concept. So the other thing is that they have ads now. So this is an opportunity to have two storefronts on Rodeo Drive or wherever you are. You have both your obviously you'd like to get the free visibility in there in your
Mm-hmm.
LLMs, but you can jumpstart by getting an ad for my carrier AC isn't working. What are some tips to try to get it going? Well, Mr. Cool LLC has been smart enough to jump right in on this. Is very early. This is within 10 days or something of when ChatGPT launched these ads. And you
Mm-hmm.
still have to get it directly as a brand. You can't get it through an agency. So the point is that it's got ads. It operates differently from Google, but it's double checking itself in Google. So it's a lot of the same stuff as we're going to talk about on the rest of the deck.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And then so this next slide speaks about the technique. So the previous slide was that cross-referencing from the LLMs going, well, we better go and look at Google to make sure we got this right. Now this is saying the techniques that appeal to ChatGPT are the same as the techniques that support discoverability in your traditional Googles.
Yeah, you're right. I got ahead of myself on the checkbox, but this is Google's been actually PRing this for over a month now, where they're starting to feel a disturbance in the force where, oh, there's a bunch of people selling LLMs and they're forgetting about Google, right? So they want their voice heard.
Mm-hmm.
They want to tell you, hey, SEO really is GEO, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, as we're going to talk through, if you've been doing advanced SEO for a while, there's a lot of alignment, but there's an opportunity to take it to the next level. And there's a need to take it to the next level with LLMs, but it really is very aligned. And that's what Google's pushing right now too. So you can go find your citations on that directly from their mouth.
Okay, that's great. So let's dig in deeper because I think it is aligned and it's a question of where you put the weight of your attention out. It might have shifted a little bit. And so let's look into it. So we've got these 5 actionable tips, things you can do now, maybe this summer, to optimize your site for AI search or your brand for AI search. And we're going to have a QR code at the end of the webinar where you can download this deck and a cheat sheet about this. So you can basically have your own list to go through as you pursue this. So the 5 top things: number 1, focus on your authority topics. Number 2, write clear, helpful content. 3, get conversational. 4 is rock the schema. And 5, be present where AI seeks answers. So let's dig in. I think we're doing okay for time, but we're going to go into each of these as a chapter. Yeah.
Great.
The first piece, focusing on your authority topics, and we focus on the funnel. So you see the top of the funnel. A lot of folks know this, even non-marketers, non-salespeople know about the funnel. There's the top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel where the sale happens. And for a long time in traditional search, there was encouragement. It was best practice to focus all along the funnel and to start at the top of the funnel, to do those general topical articles that would get very high level traffic. And now in the age of zero-click search, the LLMs aren't sending that traffic to websites anymore. They're just answering the questions right there in the synthesized answer. So the recommendation is that brands should focus on the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel by asking that question. As you say, be honest. Where do you really deserve to be at the top of the search? Where does it serve the user? Right?
Yeah.
What more would you say about that?
Well, we've talked about this across industries, and home services really is a lot different because the top of the funnel is dominated typically by local maps results, and that's dominated by ads, local service ads, right? So the place that you want to focus is for not people that are searching pest control in Tallahassee, Florida, but instead what pest control companies in Tallahassee, Florida have pet-friendly services, right? Because you're going to also have to do a separate workflow, and you might be hopefully doing some advertising. I'm not trying to shill for Google here, but if you're not there, you're not there, right? And there are certain areas at the top of the funnel, especially, where you're not, it's pay to play practically, right? Or your Google profile listing has to be so strong that you're going to be one of the top 3 pest control companies, pool repair companies. Now, if it's chimney repair and there's only one other competitor in the area, it's a shoe-in, right? But pest control, HVAC, you know, these are very
lawn and
competitive.
garden.
Yeah, they're all competitive, right? So you need to think about the top of the funnel as a paid area and focus on creating opportunities to grow your relevance for the top of the funnel through the middle of the funnel.
And that specificity for companies is around, what would you say are those special things? It would be their specific locations. It would be the services where they have
Right. The
deeper expertise.
differentiators.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, for example, in pools, there's saltwater pools and there's non-saltwater pools, right? We happen to have a saltwater pool. It's totally different, and understanding it,
Mhm.
when we bought the house was a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
But there's websites out there that do a great job of better defining that and answering the questions that people ask, right? In
Yeah.
terms of around that. So that's where, if you'd like to sell more saltwater pools than freshwater pools, then you should really focus on that, right? And
Mhm.
and not say, oh, we also sell, or we see this a lot in pest control where they also do lawn care, right? There's nothing that further dilutes yourself from pest control than lawn care, except for the connection that there's grubs and pests in lawn, right? So
Yeah.
the point is, that's an SEO's frustration when you start to introduce these squares into around. So that's why middle of funnel and bottom of funnel is so important. It's because you're reinforcing what you really want to sell.
Okay, great. And we've got some examples on the next page about combined citations. And this is showing how a brand can get multiple hits out of one query, right? What are we looking at here?
Well, everyone's probably heard of Train, and if you've ever dealt in air conditioning or had an air conditioner or thought about air conditioners, question to ask an air conditioning salesman is something that Train has obviously targeted, and it's pretty smart if you think about it, right? Because they're obviously a supplier. They're not the person boots on the ground selling the equipment, but they want to educate the people and probably lean towards, is Train right for you? Probably kind of type content, right?
Yep.
But the point is that they have content in their blog, and then they have content on YouTube that right now in 2026 in May, this is from August of 23 and August of 24, right? And
Mhm.
these are the two top citations for this query in AI overview. So it's because Train has such a strength of brand. They've
Mhm.
been doing a lot of branding for a long time. It's a perfect storm for this answer, right? They've created the exact right content across multiple sources.
Mhm.
Those two sources are being combined into an answer, which we're seeing more and more often, right?
Mhm.
So that's where, again, if you're like, let's say you're a HVAC company and you really like to focus on heat pumps, or mini splits, or heat pumps and mini splits, creating multiple pieces of content about why you think that that's better for your specific area, etc. It's going to all line up to add more value and be more likely to be pulled as an LLM response, especially for someone searching in your area, because that's another thing that people don't think about. But when people are searching in ChatGPT for this kind of home services, they are typically qualifying that to GPT, or GPT's qualifying them and saying, oh, you're in Kylene, Texas, or whatever, right?
Mhm.
So there is going to be a layer there too. So there's a lot of great layers that, if the more content you have out there in different places, that you're more likely to catch it.
Okay. And this is really showing also to me specificity, right? Where it gets deeper into a topic. And it shows up in the synthesis and in the citations, right?
Yeah.
So you're just getting more coverage
And
and
the
they're sending
headlines.
folks right to you. Yeah.
5 questions to ask your HVAC dealer before buying a system. I mean, that's perfectly written.
Yep. Okay, on to the next piece then. So writing clear, helpful, and trustworthy content. And so this is really best practices for traditional search that lives on today, right? And the first piece is the famous acronym from Google, EEAT, as far as showing you are the right entity to providing the content that is there, right? So you've got the experience to present the content. You've got expertise that makes you the right deliverer of the content. You have authority to share the content, and you're trustworthy, right? You tell the truth. You're a fair broker, and there are a lot of strategies that go into this, but it's really about positioning yourself, your entity, as the most credible source. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, can you speak a little bit more about that on the trustworthiness and authoritativeness? I know we go a lot into it later in the deck, but you've talked about trust marks and awards and positive
For home
reviews.
services, being in Angie's List and all the other potential marks that you can put on your site. BBB. If you don't have a BBB, people that don't put their BBB rating on the side, people wonder, oh, they must not have an A, right?
Mhm.
And it's not hard to get a BBBA, right? So point is, that's one that you should be using. That's just a clear sign both to machines and to humans that you're trustworthy. And we got some more examples coming up.
Okay, great. So yeah, on to the next slide. So this is just about writing clear, helpful, and trustworthy content. So this is really the etiquette of the structure and the intention of the content. So leading by adding value and just making sure you're extending empathy to the human visitors to the page, which will thereby extend empathy towards the LLMs who are scanning the page. The content is well organized, it's concise, it's clear, and it's usable. Can you say more about it?
Yeah, so there's a lot on this slide. The left side really, home services related. You want to find ways to, I think this is the biggest opportunity to drive home your experience and expertise. So there's plenty of pages out there that say we build pools, but how many pages say we are experienced and we've built 25 pools in this neighborhood, which is particularly difficult because it's a forested area and or the ground is soft, et cetera, right? So you've got to find the specific experience and expertise that aligns with your area to demonstrate on your page, right? And then you put it into consumable formats, including clear heads and subheads, bite-sized chunk and bullet points. But you also want to look, there's a great example. This is the one geeky part from South Carolina EDU, digital accessibility, which is the concept of making your content visible to people that have vision or hearing difficulties, audible if you have content that has sound. This is a great page because they actually, they preach stuff that if you look at their code, they're actually doing it too. So again, it's a geeky slide, but the point is digital accessibility is very important. And if your content's more digitally accessible, especially to people with vision or hearing difficulties than your competitors and everything else is the same, you might have a step up there, right? Because you've got more content that's actually accessible to the machine.
Yeah. And that's a good example of something that is trustworthy and helpful, but also over the years, accessibility compliance has really aligned with SEO success. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And again, from a home services perspective, you want to think about all the different people that might need your services, right? And some people are in wheelchairs, some people have vision difficulties or are old or have other difficulties, right? That they're using either software to help with. And then you also want to demonstrate that you're capable of helping people with those kinds of disabilities, for example, right?
That's we were talking about this. We should probably do another webinar about all the new news in ADA compliance.
And how valuable it is.
Yeah.
It's another layer of trustworthiness.
So on to the next tip, get conversational. So basically this is just speaking about there are these long queries that are happening when people are talking to their phones, and how do you meet those searches with your SEO strategy? And so basically you're speaking about how do you use natural language in headlines and FAQs. Can you dig deeper on this?
Yeah, so in this one, the example is great. It's from Generators US. If you search in ChatGPT for overview of home generator features, let's say you're in the market for a generator, this page is very well created because it's answering questions throughout the page. It's very natural language. How much power do you need? You can actually calculate your power needs, which is another great UX value there. What this does is it adds to the trustworthiness and the authoritatiness in the AEAT, right? Because you're really giving a lot of data for people.
It's great information.
It's well structured. What is a home standby generator? The complete buyer's guide, that's always a great winner, right? In terms of the type of concept. As long as you can back it up and really make it a complete buyer's guide, then the machines will say, oh, this is a pretty complete buyer's guide. And they know, right? So it's a great example. The other thing to think about, and that's not really represented in this example, but it is on the page, is that they have FAQs at the bottom. And that's something that nowadays in your home services website, you shouldn't just have one page of FAQs, frequently asked questions. You should have FAQs at the bottom of each of your services pages that are specific to that page and specific to you and your location. It's another area to build in the locality, the expertise in your area. You know, how often do a particular type of termite come out, and how can I tell between them and a flying ant, right? So that's pretty common and tried and true pest control content, but the way that you work it into some of your FAQs can be extra valuable because it's natural language.
Yeah. And FAQs, it's funny, it's a little bit, it's intuitive how they work, right? Because people ask questions in their searches now, and the FAQs actually mimics exactly what people might be asking. So that's one of the benefits. And then additionally, if the FAQ is at the bottom of the page, you've already got the marketing copy at the top of the page that runs through what you have to offer. And the FAQs give you an opportunity to just repeat and rephrase that in useful ways, right?
Yeah.
So it just increases the frequency.
Yeah.
So a lot of benefits there. Other ways for the conversational piece, obviously video. And the captioning on videos is innately conversational.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay, great. We'll talk a little bit more about video in the future piece about content. Okay, next section, most technical section. Get ready for this. Have a sip of coffee. Rock the schema. So, Chris, can you define for the audience what is schema and why should they love it?
Well, schema is basically like cliff notes for a machine about your page. If you think about trying to give data that's in a table on your page about the different wattage of particular HVAC units, or the different sizes of pools and filters that you might need for them, or the different types of pests that and when they appear throughout the year, right? These are all things that are in a table that a human can clearly see, but can be harder for a machine to structure. So that's an example of where you can essentially serve the content to the machine so that they can clearly read the table and the importance of the table, right? So it's background content. It's an extra way to reinforce what you're on the page. Now, we just talked about FAQs. One of the schemas that's pretty common in schemas is called the FAQ schema. So there you can take and reinforce what questions you're answering in the FAQ section, but also in your other content on the page. If you're answering some questions, you can put that in your schema, and it doesn't have to be in the form of a question and answer on your page. So you're enriching the content in a sense.
Yeah. And so we've got, and so the schema, like you say, it says, what is this structured piece of content, but it can also indicate subject matter a little bit, right? So we've got some examples coming up, but first let's look at this shocking example of schema that looks strong and may not be.
Right.
And sorry to the folks at SPS Pool Care if they're watching.
Well, there's two actually here shown. The schema.org is a way that you can go and put a page in to see what schemas you have on there, right? And it'll just report to you what schemas are on there. So SPS Pool Care, they've got schemas, but it's literally just defining a web page. So they've barely scratched the surface of this plugin called Yoast that we're going to talk about, and it was actually on the previous slide. With WordPress, you can get these plugins that give you basic schema, right? And so this one was set up, but no one ever kind of went in and even, because Yoast can do more than this, right? And so basically they've got schema, they think, on their website, but it's nothing. And then, not to this only on SPS Pool Care, we're going to talk about ASP Pool Co., another big one. They have local business. This is better, but this is pretty basic, and there's an opportunity to have a lot more on there than what they have, than just what's showing there.
Okay, so let's dig in deeper into these actual types. So the next slide talks about those common Word WP plugin out of the box schemas: website, organization, web page. These are table stakes that just help share the structure of the site. Yeah.
Great point. And that's a great way to define them. If you're not already have these on, then you're already behind the game. And this is, if you think crawl, walk, run, a lot of these are walk, and some of them can be at least become jog within the plugins and stuff.
Okay, great.
But you need more.
Yes. And so the next page shows the more.
Yes.
For home services.
So the more, MOAR, if you're a geek, is local business. We just saw one, but there's a lot more layers to that in terms of fully defining your business and the services within it, which is the next one, like AC repair or AC replacement or AC free testing, et cetera, et cetera. All the different pool, drain, roof stuff. There's so many services that are in there that they're almost, it's easier to find them in there than most of the drop downs where you have to name what kind of business you are, right?
Yeah.
So Schema is really good at this. The offer catalog. So you want to there's some cool advanced testing you can do here. Like, let's say you have residential and commercial. You can do like these subset navigations within your schema, really geeky stuff, where you just focus on just the residential stuff. So if you get me, you get me.
So the big headline on the schema is, it's not just a gesture. You don't just kind of do it. It's a pretty thorough practice. And I guess clarify for folks, can they approach a thorough schema job on their site by just using a plugin like Yoast?
Yes, but no. They can at least get somewhere, but they can't really go as far as they should. And in each schema should be customized to the page, which is another frailty sometimes of the plugins.
Okay, great. So thank you. That's rocking the schema. Last category, be present where AI seeks answers. So this is about content. And for me, there's a lot of, doom concern around AI right now. And I, a lot of folks are concerned about how it's transforming our society and what does it mean for the job market? A lot of, really worthwhile conversations happening. At the same time, right now, what this is talking about is that there's really a need for more content, because to be discoverable for these LLM tools and traditional search just requires so much content, right? So you marketers out there, just heads down, stay busy, okay? And so the first piece about this is talking about being present where AI seeks answers. And so, just to say, if you gone are the days of doing one blog post, right? You need to atomize that and turn it into a video, turn it into a couple good social posts, have it on YouTube, maybe turn it into other sorts of content, and just use it as much as you can to get out there on your owned channels and other properties. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, well, it's about getting out on YouTube. It's about getting out on Facebook, but it's also about Reddit nowadays, especially Reddit and home services, because kind of like Wikipedia was the favorite child of Google for a while, and you'd always see it on top, and even Twitter was for a bit. Now we're seeing Reddit on a lot of Google answers and also showing up in a lot of LLM citations, which is risky because some Reddit threads, they don't have fully factual information throughout the thread, right? So they're, I think, taking a risk in terms of the elevation of authority they've given to Reddit.
Sure.
Because they love it because so many humans, right? But the point is, there's more than that. And there's a little list on the right here. In home services, there's a lot of opportunity to use classic PR tactics to get into places like Angie, Home Advisor, House, Old House, Bob Villa. These are pay-to-play
listings, right? Yeah.
In a sense. But if your brand's listed in there among other brands in your category, this is a co-citation. And basically it's like, once a machine sees you hanging out with that guy enough, then they think that you're just as good as that guy, or you're definitely doing the same work as that guy, right? So that the concept is getting out there in a lot of places,
being in those,
that's PR.
And also that media relations aspect of what a lot of folks think of PR, that's also back, right? Because now when you do a press release, if you can get a story in your local paper or in the Chamber of Commerce, right? That's not just for the readers of that publication, that's also for the LLMs to read it.
Yep, 100%.
Okay, so get out there and do the media relations again. So the next piece is about multi-location practices and alignment, and this is clutch for home services, which is so location-based. Can you speak about it a bit?
Yeah, so what I've used here is an example from Orkin that's based near Atlanta. They have an inconsistency in the way that they handle their Google business profile listings. So what this is specifically a search of Google business profile results for or Google results for Orkin this is actually not business profile results, but this is for a search for Orkin Atlanta area locations. And what we see here is an inconsistency. They have Atlanta GA pest control, bed bug and termite treatment. They have another one, and these are all different. Marietta, the one that's out there, I forgot, and it's kind of somewhere next to Georgia there on the top one. You got Atlanta, you got Alpharetta, and you got Conyers, right? So these are all neighborhoods right around Atlanta where they're not using a consistent naming convention except for Marietta, Alpharetta, and Conyers, which all have town, exterminator, branch, Orkin, right? So the point is whatever level of organization you are, and if you have one location or multiple locations, you have to be consistent if you have multiple locations in your naming, and you also have to have the same information on your website. That's what I see. One of the biggest problems I see in home services is with these random addresses on websites that don't align with what you have in Google Business Profile. And it makes it very confusing for machines to then trust you enough to put you towards the top if they're not really sure which address you are, especially for that particular area. So this stuff seems geeky and
but I
minutia.
love this tip because it's just
It's super
housekeeping.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just housekeeping. Just get the numbers, get the addresses, get the formatting correct, right?
Yep. Across not just your Google Business Profile, but your website too.
Yep. And wherever else it is. So we've made it through. We're going to get to the questions in a minute. The funny thing is we only have 30 minutes in this space. We're out in the center of the agency, and people are starting to come in. So we're going to move over into the podcast studio to answer questions. But now we're going to put something up on the screen just to say there's a little question box over on the side of your webpage right now where you please can put in your questions, and our team are checking that out. But check out what's next. So next for you is we're going to tell you about some tools that you can get to support your DIY process. We're encouraging you to get going by reprioritizing your content themes and just getting into production. And now we've got this QR code as far as downloading the cheat sheet for this webinar and also this deck itself. And also when you use this QR, you can set up to have a flash audit from Chris and his team for your brand. So we can do a top look at the top opportunities and top challenges that you have within your brand digital footprint so you can get going on AI SEO this summer. So use that QR code. And now we're going to go to the question and answer.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for hopefully enjoying our webinar, which we actually recorded, as you could hear, a couple times a couple months ago. So I'm here for the live QA. We do have a couple questions that came in. Happy to get into those right now. What is the current level of importance for SEO and LLM SEO in the home services? Since it's very crowded at the top of the results with paid media. So I think it's a great question. As we discussed in the deck, it's a more and more competitive space, and often the quickest way to get to the top is through paying through local services ads with Google, for example, as well as some very high cost per click actual search ads, right? Our paid media team recently did some research in that area, and they pointed out that it's increasingly very expensive in the home services space, especially in pest services, which is exponentially larger than some of the other home services. So I guess it's very important. It's always good to have I like to say it's good, as I mentioned, I think in the presentation, to have two storefronts in whatever your Rodeo Drive is, right? That's the old concept of having one gas station on each side of the road. You're more likely to, get someone to fill up at your station. So ideally, you're able to invest at least as much in long-term organic growth as you are in paid media, in order to continue to compete on both avenues. I would suggest, especially with some of the cross-pollination that you can get from the content that you create to grow your organic strength, whether it be video or podcasts or a combination of text and video. These things can then be used across your other channels as well. So you could create sort of an additional emphasis on your content, as we talked about in the deck. The next question I have here, what's the best way to plan the right types of content to own certain topics or answers in your area? So for home services, it says, should we focus on video or blogs or both? Well, both is of course best. Why not both, as they say? It's definitely the old classic 1+1 = 3, as I demonstrated in the deck with those examples from Train, for example, where they've invested in both video and text. Now, granted, Train has a lot of industry authority that helps them, but as I mentioned also, you can grow authority relatively quickly, especially in your own area, depending on how much perceived authority your competitors have in the form of online content and testimonials. Their reviews obviously come into play, but it's a race with a lot of lanes. So even if your competitors are way ahead of you with reviews, for example, you can quickly outshine them in terms of exposure of your brand by being better than them with content, right? And part of that content is blogging, and part is videoing. Really, I want to focus on service and location page differentiation as well too. You'll know that if you work with us at Overit, that I love blogs as a means to an overall solution, but I covet those videos for the service pages and the location pages equally, because they add more value to those pages, which are the ones that are going to drive your conversions. Next question. How is link building important like it used to be in SEO? It is, yes. It's definitely evolved. I mean, people who've been evolving their processes for link building have already benefited, right? Because link building really, not to stand on a pulpit, but the most honest way to build links is through honest PR and brand development, and growing the reason that people would want to link to you. For a long time, it's been a necessary evil for SEOs, especially in competitive spaces, to actively build links to try to help with link-based authority for Google ranking signals. But really, it's about PR, right? And having something to talk about for your brand, and continuing to bang your brand drumbeat, that will lead to links. But yes, links are still important. And frankly, citations alone are important now with LLMs, as I think I mentioned. The idea is that just being mentioned in something doesn't need to have a link back to your website. If it's an authoritative piece of content about your particular area or expertise, or both, it's great. Or it's a local news paper or whatever, or a news TV website from a local news channel, and you're mentioned in a topic that's relevant and local, that's valuable too, because LLMs see that. They don't need the link as much as Google technically did, and maybe still does. And then the last question that I have, unless there's any more coming from the other side. All right. Is link building? Oh, no, I just said that one. How much can I trust AI to handle some of the technical SEO infrastructure building? Like, for example, they asked Claude to write their schemas. It's a great question. We've done some work, obviously, at Overit. We, stayed openly on a website that we leverage AI in an advanced fashion to help to increase our efficiencies and add more human value to the strategy and to the fine-tuning of things. So, for example, schemas is a good thing where I've definitely worked, and there's a lot of iteration required. You could argue that the Claude or GPT schemas that if you ask them if you just prompt them, say, hey, I want a schema for this page, it's going to come out about the same level as what I suggested is a good, starter level from a tool like Yoast. But really, to get better schemas, you're going to need an expert to prompt back and forth with your Claude or GPT or whatever, to really get more out of a schema graph, which is what we were talking about in an advanced sense. So I think that's it. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today, and I hope you guys reach out to us if you're interested in learning more about how we can help you with your home services AI SEO.